welcome to a new live session. I hope everyone's okay. My latest blog was on observation, where I talked through how you might be able to observe an object when you are drawing. And if you were to turn your drawing upside down and the image you wish to copy, what I was explaining is that the right side of your brain will start to see those objects as shapes and lines. And it's a really good tool for you to learn how to actually observe really well, to kind of take away what it is. If it's like your pet, you're not drawing an eye or a nose anymore. You're looking at the lines and the distances between the lines, the angles of the lines. That's right side of the brain observation. So the first thing I was kind of mentioning in the last blog was to start there, so that every time you observe an object, you can put into place exactly what you are seeing. Because the brain will try, if you were to draw an eye, for example, the brain will draw what you think an eye looks like and not necessarily what the eye looks like in front of you. So these are just things to keep in mind. Now, the next part of building up skills on how to draw is how to shade, how to add realistic elements to an object to make something look real. And a lot of students really struggle with this at the beginning, but as soon as you've got the basics, it is then just practice and controlling that hand-eye coordination. So I'm going to give you some tips to get going with how to shade the basic shapes, okay? Now, the basic shapes, the universal forms, we would say, are you've got a cone, you've got a cylinder, you've got a cube, and a sphere. Now, those four shapes are what you need to be constantly practicing to make sure you know how the light and how the shade works on those particular objects. And once you've mastered that, when put together with your skill of seeing an object and how to observe it, you put the two together and you're going to start getting some really great drawings in graphite pencil. So that is kind of the first stage. That's always what I do first, okay? So I'm going to just do some basic sketching, okay? Now, what is hard when you first start sketching is blending and making sure all those tones are really neatly blended. Very difficult to do. So we're going to just take the element of trying to make it so perfect away by doing some cross-hatching. Now, cross-hatching just frees you up a little bit and stops you worrying so much about being so smooth. You can see I've just been doing a little sketch here just to give an example of what I mean, okay? You can see how the light is working. There's still more to add to this, but I want to show you how I get to this stage, and then we'll do another one that's really blended so you can see the difference, okay? Now, for cross-hatching, you've just got to think lines, okay? Now, I'm just using, what pencil did I grab? A 2B, okay? So I've grabbed this pencil. Doesn't really matter. You could even do this with a fine liner. I can see some of you have posted, funnily enough, some work using a fine liner to capture texture, which is brilliant. But let me just show you. So the light is hitting this side. So always in a drawing, you want the lightest shade tone to the very darkest. So white, we're on white paper, so we can't get any brighter than that. So we want to keep the side of that shape white, and we want this side to eventually go very, very dark. Okay, so with that in mind, we can start just putting some straight lines. I'm just going diagonal. I'm not really thinking about the contour of the shape so much. I'm just going to draw some diagonal lines because I know that needs to be shaded. Now, I should have mentioned as well, to draw a cylinder is not always easy either. This ellipse does take some practice. This bottom curve is like a mirror of this top curve. Okay, the corners are rounded, so you want to keep going. This is something that needs practice. And to make it realistic, this curve here has to be a mirror of this one. It's parallel. So however long it is, this curve remains the same on a cylinder. And then you've got your two horizontal lines there. So try and get that really good. If you're struggling, I would recommend printing off even a cylinder just so you can practice the shading. But again, this is down to observation, isn't it? And seeing where these curves actually are. If you're doing a bottle or a cup or something, this ellipse is one of the important things in that particular drawing. But anyway, now we're going to add shading. So I've done some diagonal lines, and I know this needs to get very dark, so I'm just going to put diagonal lines now going the other way. It doesn't really matter how far into the cylinder you go, but I just want space in the middle to kind of blend it out into the white. So I'm kind of going almost halfway, aren't I, here? And again, I'm going to go in a slightly different direction, and you can see it's starting to build up a real dark shadow. Now, with cross-hatching, you want to start making your lines get more apart, because this is going to give the illusion of lighter shading, okay? So I'll go back over it, and you can even, I'm even lifting off the pencil a little bit to make it lighter. Now, what I should do is grab a lighter graded pencil, a harder pencil, because that will make my lines lighter, so I don't really have to worry so much about pressing any lighter, because my pencil's harder, so it will naturally go lighter. So as you can see, I've made the lines get further and further apart, and now it's kind of spreading out. Now I want to just keep working into this. You don't want to underestimate or finish too soon. I'm going to put some horizontal lines down here. You can see closer together here, and further apart as you come along. So you can see I'm building up tone now, okay? You can even put, because what you will do when you're actually shading this for real is curving your lines. The best illusion to make this look 3D is to make sure the lines that are dominant are actually curved the same as the top and the bottom of this cylinder. That's what gives you the illusion of the whole thing being round. Now, because that was at an angle, to me, as I'm holding it up, it's a bit wonky. But there you go. Okay, so you get the idea. So you can start curving your lines to match the ellipse all the way down here. That will give a better illusion. Now, with shading, now because I've done this much darker, I've kind of ruined the illusion already, because obviously a cylinder wouldn't have a dark line here. This is going to be the hardest one to eliminate. You can rub that out. But to just make it more realistic, I can offer some shading. You don't need to really worry. A lot of students might want to make that round because it's a round shape, but I'm not observing anything. I don't know exactly how that shadow is going to form without it in front of me. So I'm just going to just do it you don't have to actually have it curved or anything like that. But if I just add some cross-hatching down here to blend in this bottom line to the page, can you see it starts to make it a bit more realistic, because it's not just a floating object now on the page. I've actually got a little bit of detail going behind. You can see, so they're always lines. I'm just going one way diagonal, the other way diagonal, and then if I want it to be darker, I can add another layer and another layer, until, like these edges, for example, start blending into the background. Okay, just so I've given it a bit of a place on the page. Okay, now we can do this side, but you can see the edge is defined by the shadow there, but ideally I wouldn't really have any outline on show, but I'll show you that after. Now this is a quick way to do sketching. If, say, you're in a gallery, or you are literally sketching ideas and you just want to get an idea of the tone, an idea of a composition, you can see how quickly this builds up. Okay, it's not overly realistic yet, but in time it's going to just give you a a basis to work on. It shows that you understand the tones. Just the fact that you're building over and over is a starting point for you to know the variations of tone. Now, if I get a much darker pencil, because you want your tonal scale on any observation needs to go from black to white, okay, on a monochrome drawing, so like this with graphite. So you want the darkest area to really go dark. And as soon as you add your darkest pencil and tone, especially with a pencil drawing, it will start to look more realistic. The more tone you've got, okay, the more variation of tone, the better. Even with my dark pencil, I've been able to build up now an extra layer of tone. And again, if you do the same in this background area here, you'll see the difference when you truly have such a range of tone. You can see it's starting to get more and more realistic, can't you? Now, all I've done is picked up a darker pencil. What's this? A 6B? Yeah, 6B. So that I can really add some dark shadows. So, to start off with shading, I really recommend doing cross-hatching because it's just a very basic way. You're not having to be too careful. It keeps it looking a bit sketchy, but as you can see, you will still build up tone. You might want to put a little bit on the top. This doesn't have to be curved because it's a flat top. But you might just want a little bit of cross-hatching. It might go into the shadow on the top there. So that's the first thing. Now I'm going to draw this cylinder a bit more realistically. Now this takes time. Okay, so I'm going to do it under, I'll tilt my screen a little bit. We'll just draw another cylinder. Now ideally you would do all of the universal forms. Okay, because this is how you learn to draw. If you can do, Cézanne said this, if you can do those 4 universal forms, you can draw anything. Just lift this up slightly so I can get it straight. Now all of this is from memory. If you want to copy one, okay, to get it more realistic, if you even want to print one and trace one off the screen, so what? It doesn't matter. Just so you've got a practice. So there's my next cylinder, okay? So to make it realistic, what we're doing is the same principle. We want to go from light to dark, but not so sketchy. We want this to look realistic. This is where it's time consuming. Your pencils have to be very sharp, okay? And what you're doing is with every stroke, is you're following the contours of that shape. So because it's a cylinder, all of my lines are going to curve. I'm going to have none going diagonal. I'm going to have none going horizontal. Because as soon as you start adding those kinds of shapes, you spoil the illusion, okay? So you curve your line with your pencil, and you can start off a bit sketchy, as you can see I am here. But over time, you will start to fill in the gaps that you've got from the white page, and every line will be curved. Now I'm using one of the lighter pencils from my set. I think this one's a HB, yeah. Now, because I know this edge is going to be solid, we can go vertical just to fill in those gaps. Because the problem is, if you try to keep going that way, it might end up being a bit hairy. So you want to just make sure that edge stays very straight. Okay. You can do some horizontal lines because you know it's going to blend in just at the very vertical line here, at the end there. Okay. So, curve. So as you can see, this is realistic drawing. In the time it took me to do that whole thing, I've only put one layer of pencil on here, but you will start to see the difference, okay? Now, some students will feel the need to get their finger and start smudging, but if you're very careful with your pencils, this is not really necessary. You can smudge, but I always tell my students you have to be extremely controlled, and you can get carried away until the whole thing just looks like one big smudge. Okay? It doesn't have to be like that. You just have to be patient that all your lines will blend together. So I've again, because I was demonstrating, that's my excuse anyway, I've done quite a dark outline. So I'll need to eliminate all of these lines to make this look realistic. A real cylinder wouldn't have these lines, would they? If the top of the cylinder is lighter than the background, then the background needs to make the definition between that line. You don't actually want a line there. And again, this doesn't matter being curved because this is a wall, so you can go completely horizontal for this. So you can see when you colour in the background, colouring, you know what I mean, shade the background, it will make it more realistic. And I always go quite far. You don't just want a little bit of shading, you want that whole shape to look realistic. So keep going off to the sides a bit to really look like that shape is coming out of the page. And I'm going to do the same down here too. You can see this top edge looks better now. Okay, because you've got a defined edge. You can't see a line of pencil anymore. I never want that on my drawings. It completely ruins the illusion. So I've gone from light to dark, but nowhere near enough. Now I'm going to jump straight to the highest, the softest pencil. But what you guys want to try and do is do it a bit at a time. Take the next grade up and then add a bit more, the next grade, and you want to just add it bit by bit. If when you get very controlled, you can apply different pressure, but you really don't want to do an entire drawing with a HB pencil, ideally. So I'll do some vertical lines just to really solidify this edge here. Make sure you're always curving. So it takes time, huh? Slowly, slowly. And you can see it's now starting to blend real nice. And this is the difference between cross-hatching and this kind of shading. So as you can see, this is a good starting point, isn't it? To cross-hatch, to understand where all the tones are going to go. But then start really taking time. I'm going to just lift that to this. I want this to be so dark. This needs to be black here. So I'm just pressing really hard because I want that edge to really be in the shadow. And then let me just blend this out. Now, once you have this skill, you'll see in a few weeks' time that you can apply things very similar with paint. If you know your tones, then it's the same, whether you're mixing green paints, blue paints, whatever it is. If you can graduate the tones on a still life drawing, it is the basis for observation. So I need to do this. It takes time because you want to really blend this out. It doesn't really matter, as I say, the direction of the pencil on this part because a wall is flat. You don't need it to have an illusion of being 3D. I'm just rushing this in so you can see how to blend in those outlines. And then you can neaten up all the edges, make sure they're very crisp with a very sharp pencil, as the edge of a cylinder is. Okay, so you can see it's coming together. I've still got more to do on this, but you can see the difference. Now, people who use their finger can blend out these lines if they want, okay? And just very carefully make it go from light to dark. It does work and it does help to a certain extent, but I'd only really do it where you've got the mid-tone right in the middle here. I wouldn't be tempted to try and get rid of all of these lines. It doesn't really matter. These lines are adding illusion to your drawing, and it doesn't have to be so perfect that you actually need to smudge the whole thing. It's not necessary. This now needs sharpening. You always need a sharp pencil. Okay, so let me just come down a grade, just save you watching me sharpen that one. So hopefully you've seen the difference, and you can try and explore these, okay, and try and do all of them. The cone is very similar to this because your base is rounded like that, but then it just gets smaller to a point. But the curves and the contours are very similar. A sphere is much more difficult. I'll do a demonstration for a sphere because a lot of students struggle with adding tone to a sphere. But if you think from a cross-hatching point of view, you need a perfect circle, obviously. So if you want to draw around something, you can. If you've got your light here, so you need this area to stay white, then obviously start cross-hatching all the way around, okay, this white bit that you want to keep there, and you will start to build up where the tone needs to be, just so you can see how a sphere's shading gets built up, because it's circular. So even your cross-hatching, if you can, should be rounded. You should always round off and follow the contours of the shape. The difficult thing with a sphere is the whole thing is round. So you're kind of shading in a big circle, okay? But keep going, just like I did at the very beginning, and make it really dark around the edges. And let it fade out to this bit in the middle here. Even this bit is very dark at the top. Everything is dark around apart from that middle bit there. So you can do it to a sphere and just keep going. You see, if I'm cross-hatching, you can get really quick results, okay? So just keep adding to it. But I will do a whole demonstration on spheres very soon. But start with the cylinder, start with cross-hatching, and then try a smooth blending using as many pencils, different grade pencils as you can, okay, to get a really nice realistic effect with your tonal shading. Okay, so both are great, both will show that you understand where the light and the dark is, but yeah, they're very different, aren't they? Time consuming and very quick. So have a go, because what we are going to do is put together the lesson on how to observe an object, the idea of how shading and light and shade sits on all of those objects to do a still life. So the next time I'll demonstrate a real still life drawing where we're looking at objects and hopefully putting the two together. So thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you've learned a little something and that you can start building on your experience of drawing, and I'll see you very soon to do a still life. Cheers guys. See you soon. Bye.